came to the right place. We'll give people a chance to file in. You are watching DraftKings, the Slate. We are here until 6-ish, because there are Madden Sims tonight. But welcome in on the DK Nation Twitter platform, also on YouTube and Twitch. 5 games in the NBA. We are talking basketball for the next hour or so on this stream. Brendan Glasheen with Matt Meiselman. He returns tonight. And of course, Chirag Hira is part of our not threesome. What's the better way? Our trio. There's a better way of putting it. Yeah. Our trio to discuss the association. Not many games to me here that jump off the page as a marquee matchup, but some good teams are in action. And as Matt Meiselman pointed out before we went live, these teams are slowly but surely getting closer to full strength, which is great news for the NBA because that means they're getting through this variant and guys are just getting back in the mix here. So should be good. And like Chirag said, typically we're doing 3-game slates on Tuesdays. We've got 5 games to talk about. So that's all good stuff. Chirag, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm great, man. Happy New Year. Happy to be here. Just the only part that's not cool is that it's cold. I love the snow, but I don't like it when it's cold because my heater has been tested today.
Ooh, how'd that go?
I'm so used to being warm that it not being warm has been somewhat challenging. I'm actually wearing 2 sweatshirts right now just to make it. So
the heater might be working, but we're really going to find out how good it's working. We're going to need to take a couple.
Oh no, it is amazing. It is amazing. It's
Okay.
been amazing. So the fact that it's like not amazing, it's like I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is what it feels like to be cold. Like since the cold has started in, I don't know, what would you say, October, when it started really getting chilly, I have not even felt any cold. My thermometer on my little fan thing reads like 70 degrees on average every single day. So I'm like, I have not been cold whatsoever. So it's like hitting me like I just jumped into an ice cold bath.
Well, like the heat in your apartment or wherever you are, hopefully your betting and DFS outlooks are also hot tonight. Well,
they're going to be hot because the man of the hour is Matt. I mean, that he drops the knowledge, and I'm just thankful that I get to get slacks from him sometimes when there's obvious betting spots.
Yeah, it's always a good sign when you start the day or the afternoon and Meiselman says, and this is classic Meiselman, yeah, I got nothing yet, no takes, and then boom, comes in with a couple. He's good to go. Matt Meiselman, so what's developed here this afternoon that makes you feel good about some things on this NBA slate?
Well, my first contrarian take of the day is I love the cold. Like, I don't know what you guys are even talking about. Oh. It's healthier when it's cold. It's just good for your body. We can do like a science show today and just talk about how great cold weather is for everything.
That'll go well these times.
But for personal preference, I love this time of year. It's amazing. Yeah, for the slate tonight, I still don't think there's a ton that like jumps out because there's been days recently, or I guess like a couple of weeks ago when we were last on here, where you have major players who are game time decisions and news could break one way or the other. There's not much of that today. Julius Randle is like the biggest question mark, I think, right now. And I've been saying all year, like, I don't think he's good. Like, I don't even think the spread will move based on him playing or not. That's more of a DFS relevant thing. That he's just a high usage player. He'll have a major effect on the other Knicks players if he's in or out. And there's a couple other Knicks guys that are also questionable, returning from COVID for conditioning, kind of the theme of the NBA over the last week or so. Nothing major happened this afternoon that changed my outlook betting wise. There's just a spot that I've been targeting for a couple games now, and that's the Phoenix Suns without their starting center and their backup center. And I guess you could call it their third string center because Jay Crowder does play center for them sometimes when they go small. They don't have Ayton or McGee or Crowder. So the spot on New Year's that I loved was the Celtics. And part of that was like the Celtics played their worst game of the season the night before against the Clippers and got back on track. It didn't go so well going against the Suns with the Hornets, which was 2 nights ago. The Hornets lost by 34. I honestly, I have no idea what happened in that game.
It was just a bounce back spot. They lost in a competitive game, and they're like, we are better than this. And they were all angry after that game because I called it for the NBA bet stream. So I remember all their reactions and everything after that. Yeah. But it was a good bounce back spot. I think that's what happened there.
Yeah, so motivation maybe just won out in that particular case, or the Hornets. I mean, the Hornets are very reliant on making threes, and it seems like they just went cold. I mean, for Charlotte's only scored 99. I guess Suns played good defense, but whatever it is. So the Suns are missing Landry Shamet now also, which means that Elfrid Payton probably enters the rotation. It's just one more decent player that's going to mean a lack of depth for Phoenix. And then the Pelicans are getting healthy. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is still out for COVID, but they've got everyone back. I'm a little surprised Brandon Ingram's playing tonight. Last night was his first game back off an Achilles injury. It kind of seemed like, maybe they'd give him a night off on a back-to-back, but both games are at home. There was no travel here. They played Utah last night at home. This is another home game. So I guess that just makes it easier for him. J Val's back. He was out for COVID. Josh Hart was dealing with an injury. He should be in there. So I think this Pelicans team is decent. And I think the Suns, as they're currently constructed, are the better team, but I don't think they're better by that much. And they're laying 7.5, I think 7 now points. And to me, that line should be a lot lower. So that's like the one betting spot that I really, really like, is just, it's a continuation of just the public not understanding how much it matters that the Suns not only don't have Ayton, but don't have McGee and don't have Crowder. They're just really thin in the front court. And the Pelicans are certainly a team that could take advantage of that. Ingram can play down low, and obviously Valanciunas can do a lot near the basket. We saw, Robert Williams triple-double against the Suns. Like, the front court specifically is probably where the Suns can be exposed. The Hornets didn't have that. The Pelicans do. So that's like my long-winded explanation, largely because I don't have another hot take betting-wise right now. Like, I just like the Pelicans. I like the other games. I think we can find some value, and as news comes out, I think there might be some small edges and I guess potentially large ones if we get something super surprising that pops up. But as of now, like, the Pelicans by far are my favorite betting situation for tonight.
Granted, they've been in this spot quite a bit. Never mind an underdog, but a home underdog. New Orleans is 8-6 at home as a home dog this year. 8-6. That's the second best record in the NBA, behind Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City's got 12 wins against the spread, but some of those are really inflated. But yes, overall, New Orleans at home as a dog has competed against the number for sure. Chirag, do we lose Chirag?
Maybe. I don't see him.
I don't see him either.
Until we get him back anyway, full disclosure, I like the Pelicans last night at +10, and they fouled down by 9 with like 10 seconds left and lost by 11.
Against Dallas, right? Was it Dallas?
Against Utah.
Who did Dallas play last night?
Dallas played Denver. They also won by, I don't know, significant amount.
Okay.
The Pelicans decided to give away the spread at the end of that game last night because, I don't know. They were still trying to win. I mean, it is what it is. Teams foul down 9 all the time at the end of games. So hopefully they don't do that.
But like, to your point, these younger teams like the Oklahoma Cities, the New Orleans Pelicans guys, especially when you have a guy like Zion out, guys are competing for a lot of times too. This is really the case for the league now with a lot of these hardship contracts and guys getting their first whiff of pro basketball. When you go to the 7th, 8th, 9th man, these guys are going to try. Like, they're not out there just to suck up minutes at a blowout necessarily. They're going to go out there and try.
Yeah, for sure. Although it's weird, like some teams that you wouldn't think would fit that description also, just for whatever reason, their coaches like different schemes, like they'll just foul at the end of games too. In the Miami Golden State game last night, Spoelstra was playing that like down to the last second, even though they were losing by, I think it was 8 or 9 points, and he was fouling late. Someone who's smarter than me probably should be able to weigh in more on like how the coach's tendencies might affect these late game situations. That's not something I have a lot of expertise in, but I think in general, you're right. Like, the younger teams will probably try more to the end, and veteran teams, it's more like a toss up. You just kind of have to know the team. But I do think just like the Suns being on the road, they've been in the midst of a pretty long road trip, and they haven't played especially well aside from this Hornets game. Right. The one that they won a couple of days ago. Like, aside, they really have struggled without their front court players. And like I had said this last year and probably into this year too, DeAndre Ayton may not be the Suns' best player, but I think he's their most important player because he's the least replaceable guy on the team. And that actually became less true this year because McGee was a competent backup. Last year they had no competent backups, but McGee's out also. Like, they're missing both guys. So they're like there aren't a lot of teams that can keep doing well when you're missing your top center and your backup center. The Suns are much more capable of making up for losses at guard. Like we saw when Devin Booker was out, the Suns played just fine because Chris Paul is really good, and then their bench is good. Cameron Payne is a really solid bench player. Landry Shamet, who's also out now, he's a solid bench player too. And then Bridges, obviously Cameron Johnson. Like they have all these wings that are really good, but in the front court, like it's Jalen Smith and Bismack Biyombo. I don't think that's especially exciting right now.
So from a DFS perspective, do you look to the Pelicans up front, like a Valanciunas is not 9,300 too steep, but maybe a Hernan Gomez at 5K? Or those are still pretty steep prices, right?
Yeah. The problem is that the Pelicans are priced for Ingram to be out still, I think, because he only just came back. So I don't think we've gotten those price decreases that would make them really playable. Like I think Ingram himself is interesting as a GPP guy at 9,600, but like Josh Hart really is the main guy I'm looking at, 6,600. I think so I guess we can talk about the DFS slate just in a more holistic sense.
Yeah.
LeBron James is the guy everyone's looking at. So that's probably where we have to start. Because
against the Kings,
great matchup. And when LeBron plays center, the rebounds just go up. Just not having Anthony Davis there in general means he's going to have the ball in his hands more. He's been playing big minutes. Like LeBron has been absolutely insane fantasy-wise lately. I do worry that he's going to like wear down a little at that. But,
yeah.
Definitely. Like he's LeBron and he's maybe the greatest athlete ever, but he also is 37. Like
in the same breath, he has to play. Like they're in a spot. We've talked about this on the show a ton about the Lakers. Like he has to play this many minutes, and they can't blow anybody out. I know they blew out the Blazers the other night.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to blow out the Kings. Like, can they
they're
keep up with
6.5 point favorites. That's like a reasonably close spread. The Lakers aren't a good team.
The other night only lost by 5 without Towns and Russell. They're not blowing teams out. They're not good enough.
And these are home games too. Yeah. I wouldn't expect them to win. I mean, it wouldn't shock me because the Kings are pretty bad, but I would not expect, like, the most likely outcome is this game is pretty close at the end. The problem with this slate though, is there isn't actually a lot of value, which is like, it's a very unusual circumstance for NBA basketball over the last, let's say, 6 weeks, where just about every slate, there's like all these min-priced players stepping into larger roles because everyone's out for COVID. Now we're starting to get guys back, and those value plays don't really exist. So like Trey Jones backing up to Dejounte Murray, and then Kiefer Sykes and Dwayne Washington as like the 3 cheap guards. Those are all like fine value plays. None of them are that underpriced. Like they're all in the 3 to 4K range, but none of them are that great. And then after that, like there's some guys who we can expect like 5 to 5.5x from, but there's no one that really stands out as like a guy you have to have. So despite that, I think people will still just play LeBron and play these cheaper players. And I'm just going to try to look elsewhere to find these mid-range players who are not LeBron, not Domantas Sabonis, because I think he'll be popular too, and then not these like cheap value plays who actually aren't great value plays.
That's why Ingram kind of jumps off the page, to your point, that perhaps you get some value there. Even Devin Booker at 8,800. That's pretty interesting. We can kind of bounce around here. We're talking primarily NBA here up until about 5 minutes of 6 here on the stream. Twitch, YouTube, also on Twitter. So there's the other game to me that's attractive between two pretty decent teams where they stand in their conferences, Memphis and Cleveland. Cleveland's been this unbelievable team covering at home. They've been awesome. They've been one of the best surprises in the league this year, Cleveland Cavaliers. And then you've got Memphis coming off a really, really nice win over the Brooklyn Nets. And now everyone loves the Memphis Grizzlies and their pieces. And they've been a good story all year. I think both teams are kind of in interesting spots in their respective conferences. They're very similar. Does Cleveland keep it up at home here as a great team against the spread at home?
We have Chirag back, so we can jump to him soon. Now is he not here?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I don't know if my internet is stable.
Well, we see you, and
all right, cool.
You're in your DraftKings background vortex. It looks like.
Yes. I'm in my DraftKings background vortex. I'm supposedly hardwired in, but it's too cold to check. We don't know if it's actually
too cold.
It's that heat talk that did us in. Do you have a take on Memphis and Cleveland tonight?
Well, before Chirag weighs in, we just found out Darius Garland's going to play, confirmed. I think he was probable, so that shouldn't.
That just went off the board right now. Just as we were talking about, just dropped off the board.
So no one can do anything with what we're about to say. That's a little unfortunate because I do
I'm
think
sorry.
this line.
Who was it?
Garland. So
He's
Garland
playing.
would, yeah, he cleared health protocols.
Oh,
and he was
that
like,
is
he was
okay.
potentially going to be held out for conditioning, but I think like based on what everyone was saying, like the quotes from teammates, coaches, whatever, the expectation was he would play. I think this line still will move though to like -4 or so.
So you
I
had a
just
chance
don't.
at 2.5.
I think people will react to this, and 4 is probably what I think roughly the fair line is. It's interesting though, because the Grizzlies have been undervalued all season. This has been like my team that I've been saying, like this team is really good, whether Morant plays or not. Like they have so much depth, but they're coming off this massive win in Brooklyn. Like I think they probably are a bit overvalued right now.
What do you think, Chirag?
Yeah, I agree to that. And just traveling, just continuing to, as well as Cleveland has played at home, traveling while we've saw just what the Grizzlies are up to, it just makes more sense to side with the Cavs here. I just think that they just have the right pieces in place just to build on. I mean, they're not obviously a championship caliber team, but that doesn't matter in the regular season per se. So I like the Cavs. We'll see. It'll be really interesting to see what the number comes back as, because right before it went down, it was Cavs -3.
Oh, it was 3. Okay. So I thought it was 2.5. So I guess that
I saw 3 right before it went down.
It's been bouncing back and forth between those two numbers all day. Well, just a quick note here, something to keep an eye out for. Joe Ingles is now in health and safety protocols, and the Jazz played in New Orleans last night. So, if anyone on the Pelicans winds up testing positive, obviously I'm going to like them a lot less. So yeah, we'll just have to, I don't know, start yelling if something happens there. But yeah, I think it's going to be.
And there it is, 3.5. It's back up.
Small move. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal because I think the expectation was that he was probably going to play anyway. But he's definitely relevant. Like the Cavs don't have other guards now with Rubio not playing. I mean, they've been playing some big lineups, and we saw.
Is Rondo in the protocol?
I think I don't know if he tested positive or he just has to be because of like the rules when you get traded. There might be some quirk there.
Okay.
But he's not available yet.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Just a point of clarification. So Darius Garland is in tonight for the Cavs, and that has caused a 0.5 point in movement. Cavs are now 3.5 point favorites tonight against Memphis, coming off a really, really nice win. I think we lost Chirag again. So we will monitor Chirag and his status. Of course, we start talking about his freaking heat, and that's what happens here. Guy's all cozy. Got to keep him on his toes. Cleveland's got the best record against the spread in the NBA this year, 25-10-2. They are covering 71% of the time. I'm certain their streak ended, right? Their covering streak. I think that ended.
Yeah, I think so. There was it may have ended before anyway, but I don't think they covered against the Pacers the other night, although it depends when you grade those because LeVert hit protocols. The Cavs went from like -2.5 to -4.5. They won by 4.
Yeah.
So does that count as a cover or not? I actually don't know the answer to that.
So that's probably the best game as far as just two teams that are giving it their all and are kind of they're feel good stories. The Cleveland Cavaliers and the Memphis Grizzlies. We have to keep an eye on the Julius Randle news, of course, with that Pacers team. Man, since that report came out about breaking up their core of Sabonis and Malcolm Brogdon and changes coming, that team is just like they've weirdly come together, or maybe that slowed down. But man, the Pacers they're an annoying team.
It's really frustrating. I totally get what you're saying. Like it's frustrating because this is a team I thought could get like back in it and make a push for the playoffs. They've lost a lot of close games. Like they have been playing well, but they haven't been winning. They were one of the teams that lost to a last second DeMar DeRozan buzzer beater in a game where they were playing well against the Bulls, and DeRozan just did the thing that he wound up doing 2 days in a row. They almost beat the Cavs on the road without Caris LeVert. Like they have Sabonis, Turner, and Justin Holiday, and like the rest of the roster is just guys who normally aren't part of their rotation. So they like the fact that they've held it together with just those guys is pretty impressive. I don't really know how I feel about tonight's Pacers-Knicks game, but in terms of like future betting, maybe that's where we can jump to next.
Why? What do you think? Something about the Pacers?
I did. I'm going to have to find a new team now, though, because they're like 9 games under 500. Like, I don't see them being able to really stick around in the playoff race. Like, I think it's starting to get more likely that they're just going to be selling off just because like they're going to see their chances dwindling and let's get something for veteran players and change things up. Because the best case for them is, I think at this point, they're a 9 or 10 seed and get lucky in the play-ins. Like, I don't think they have really a great chance anymore.
I don't think their odds are up right now anyways. So, it's kind of a moot point, but yeah, I mean, that's a team. We're getting close to that point where guys can get moved starting January 15th, I think it is, right? So guys that have not free agents, but guys who signed extensions and things like that, right? I'm pretty sure that's the date, the 15th.
Sounds right. I don't know for sure, but it sounds right.
So not if you signed a free agent contract as an unrestricted free agent, you could be moved as early as December 15th. But I think maybe that's changed. But I know January 15th is like the date where guys can be moved that sign those big deals. I know that because in Boston, there's been talk about Marcus Smart and if the Celtics are going to make changes and whatnot.
Yeah, I hope not. I think the Celtics are really good. Like, I'm interested in the Celtics to win the Eastern Conference and the championship still.
You don't mean that.
I do mean that. Just at the given odds, like just look at where the Celtics are in terms of odds to win the title at the moment. I don't think they're going to win, but they're like down where the Knicks are. It's insane.
Well,
like
the Knicks, it's like I believe in that Knicks team more than the Celtics.
Yeah, but I think there's a thing where people tend to be biased against the places where they're from. Like, I'm in New York, New Jersey area, so I think the Knicks are terrible, and you're from the Boston area.
I'm being a square. I know. I get it.
And maybe I was being a square about the Knicks last year when I didn't think they were any good, and they proved me wrong. I truly think the Knicks are bad now. I think I can be right. Even if I was wrong last year, the Knicks have not been good. But anyway, like the difference is the Celtics have the talent, and they're just not playing well. The Knicks don't have the talent. Like the Celtics could, if they figure it out, like there are so many players on that team where if you said like Marcus Smart goes to another team and is like the 3rd best player on a championship winning roster, you'd be like, I could see that. He's just not playing well here. And the same is probably true for like Al Horford it's probably even more true for Jaylen Brown, and Tatum potentially could be like one of the 10 best players in the league. He's not quite there yet, but he's very young. Like I think the talent's high enough that there's a shot. But anyway,
this feels like a Kaufman show. I don't like it.
I mean, I'm not a Celtics fan. I just somehow just the way the seasons work, the Celtics are the team that continues to be undervalued. I mean, they demolished the Suns without Tatum on New Year's, and they were underdogs at home in that game. Like that was,
and they were down by 14 to Orlando with 3 minutes left the other night.
Fair, but they didn't have Tatum for that game, and they also didn't have Robert Williams, who maybe their best player now. I mean, Robert Williams is awesome.
I agree. I love the Williams contract. He's been one of their bright spot players this year. Yeah. So, all right. Well, we're keeping an eye on news as it pertains to tonight's games. Unless you've got so Meiselman's favorite play right now on the board is he likes the Pelicans. Is +7 okay? 7.5? Yeah. 7's fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
7.5 is better, but yeah.
Right. Well, correct. Right. But I think that moved since we started the show.
Yeah. It's been, it's actually been as low as 6.5 today. And I think it was as high as 8. But that might have been the overnight line from last night. It's been moving around. 7's fine. Like I think the fair line for this game is somewhere around 4.
So every time we do this show, it's every Tuesday, but we were off with the last week with the holiday, and sometimes we got people in and out of the program. But that Lakers no to make the playoffs, that number just keeps falling.
It was lower than this, actually. It bottomed out. It's gone back up a bit because they beat Minnesota and Portland the last 2 games.
Yeah.
Prior to those 2, it was 200. Like that was the lowest I've seen it. But it's still like I'd still bet it. Obviously, I'm going to say that, but I would still bet it.
Yeah, and that's but see, for that to really truly happen, right? Like I know you've talked about the Spurs being a team that could leapfrog them and sneak in. And as we've discussed, we clarified this last show we did, the play-in tournament does not include the playoffs, right? You got to be a top 8 team.
It's the end of the play-in tournament, yeah.
I'm pardon me. So yes, you could get in the play-in, but if you don't win in the play-in, just because you make the play-in does not mean you made the playoffs. Right. That's that. Yeah. So if the Lakers were to be the top seed in the play-in. That does not qualify as getting in yet. They'd have to win the play-in.
Right. And they probably would. Like, a lot of this is dependent on them being the 9 or the 10 instead of the 7 or 8, where they would then need to win 2 games instead of 1 game. I think it's pretty close to 50-50 if they make it above, let's say, 8.5. Like, in my mind, I think there's about a 50-50 shot that they're in the 1 win or 2 win situation. I think it's pretty unlikely they're in the top 6 and pretty unlikely they're in the bottom 5, like below the play-in. They're probably going to be in the play-in some capacity. But yeah, as like the anti-Lakers person, it's a little concerning that the Clippers don't have Paul George anymore. It's a little concerning that the Blazers have played so poorly, though they may get CJ McCollum back soon. Like that team, I think, can probably get it together. Like once McCollum's back, Lillard's playing, Nurkic is playing. That's a good team when they're healthy. They just have not been healthy. And then the Spurs, I think, have a chance to leapfrog them. And I think the Wolves are good. So that's probably like the one team where, like, the fact that the Lakers were only -7 at home against the Wolves with no Towns or Russell is very telling about the overall quality of those teams. Like, that's a pick'em game probably in LA if the Wolves are healthy. Granted, Anthony Davis is still out, but is he ever coming back? Like, that's the difference between the Lakers and other teams, is just like the chances of LeBron and Davis not being there.
Right. It's the Lakers have it's a very interesting dilemma. And I think it's going to come down to some offseason discussions of whether or not they want to keep AD as their future core. And he might be the only.
Where are these questions coming from, man?
See, we get away with this when you're not here, but now that you're here, we're just going to pretend we didn't talk about it.
Nah, but I mean, remember, after the Lakers won the championship, AD signed a 4-year deal. It was 3+1, I think, from my understanding of the deal. So this is not the exact offseason to be going in with, are we going to keep AD? It's still going to be one more run. The bigger question is that where is LeBron going to go, and what is going to happen with him? Is like his son is still a couple years away. So
you think LeBron's a flight risk from LA at this point in his career?
Yeah. I mean, the only reason he would stay at this point is because his son is playing basketball in LA. So he's not just going to up and take his son away from the whole point of going to LA was to play in that structured system, to grow and to build and to be the way that he is. LeBron is setting everything up to make it so that him and his son can play together before he retires. That's all it is. And that's why he won't leave LA now.
So you're saying he won't leave LA?
He won't leave LA, but that's the biggest question to be had, more than AD. You're not going to get fair value for AD. He's on a max contract after having an all NBA season, basically helping them win the championship. Like, there's no question. This is the team. It's how do they build that core? THT is like their youngest piece in their entire team. Like, what if you could unload the Davis contract and you go get another? No, who are you gonna get? Ben Simmons? Like, who are you going to get? You're not gonna get Dame Lillard for him.
No, just go to free agency and sign someone else. Like, find a way to dump the contract. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I don't know.
No, the contract that you move is Russell Westbrook at $41 million expiring. Westbrook's contract is expiring next year. So that's the key piece to move.
They should have convinced Cleveland to take Westbrook. I mean, Rondo doesn't help.
I wish they did. I was like, man.
Yeah, Dan Gilbert's going to do LeBron a favor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he probably wouldn't view. I guess I have no idea what Dan Gilbert thinks of Russell Westbrook. I don't really know what most of the league, but that would just be hilarious. Like, the narrative Westbrook tries to go win it in LeBron City, after being the outcast in LA. I would love to watch
I just don't understand.
It would also ruin the Cavs season.
Who is going to want Westbrook after this year? That is my bigger question.
Well, that's why I don't get your question. How are they going to move him? How are they going to move him?
It's like the only team that could really want him is New York. That's the only team that I see.
Oh man, don't
saying like, okay, we need to do something. It's going to be New York or Indiana, because the Pistons and Magic are fully tanking. Magic have plenty of guards. Pistons are not messing with Cade's usage. So I think it's going to come down to Indiana. Do they blow it up, and how do they blow it up? Or if the Knicks say, hey, we need Russell Westbrook because we don't have elite guard play.
We actually do have a situation to watch for the Lakers game tonight, which is for the other team. If you want to pivot there, Chimezie Metu is now out for COVID protocols, which could be sneaky relevant for props, for DFS, for all those things. If you guys want to keep going on the Lakers futures, I love it. Don't get me wrong.
You know why it's relevant though, because like the value won't change in this team. It just won't. Like, yeah, they're still an unbelievable favorite to win the championship.
There's no way they're missing the playoffs. I can bet that they will not miss the playoffs.
They won't. And you know what?
Bet it. You have to lay 3-1 that they make it. Those are the odds.
Yep.
Are you gonna? But like, honestly though, would you bet that? I can't. Like,
I already have a future sitting with the Lakers to win the championship, so I'm already in a hole.
That's a different question. Yeah. Right. It's good you can be honest about it.
Yes. But no, why would I take minus 310? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
No, fair enough.
The risk is too high. LeBron could twist an ankle and be out for 4 weeks, and then Russell Westbrook show for.
Yeah, no, I do think if they stay healthy, it's just a big if, but if they're healthy, they make the playoffs. We're banking on something that, I don't know.
I think their goal to this point is to piece it all together and win the play-in, and the league will want them to. Sorry, I'm going to go there. The league's going to want them to win the play-in. What's the league going to say?
How are they going to make them do it though? Like,
they're going to. You can't force. Like, they imagine. Like, they played the Warriors last year and they barely got by Golden State. Like, obviously Golden State, you can see now they're at the top of the league, but like the Timberwolves have good depth. Say what?
That was a different Warriors team that they barely got by last year. This version of the Warriors is much, much better. Like, Gary Payton, I'll say, like, he's unbelievable. That's like, I think currently the most underrated player in the NBA. Otto Porter's been awesome. Like, the Warriors are a lot better.
I know the Lakers thing is an off-season topic, but it's they gotta. I don't know if I know what you're saying, Chirag, but Anthony Davis is not the answer as the next core piece. It's not true.
You don't have a choice. He's so injury prone. Nobody's taking on that contract.
Maybe
risk.
Someone will get stupid. You have to hope someone gets
stupid. But why?
So you go get someone else who's not hurt.
No, but why would another team take that? What is the gain that
ticket sales?
Anthony Davis playing 50 games a year is ticket sales?
I don't know. You got to.
No, man, it's Westbrook. It's Westbrook moving. That's the only.
I agree. If you can do the Westbrook thing, I get it. I'm just saying. I think LeBron's like, oh my God, I don't have the right superstar to help me.
Yeah, you watch him when Westbrook gets beat on defense, and LeBron's just looking at him like, how are you here? Like, how are you doing this? To the Lakers' credit, though, like, to say something positive about them, LeBron has been unbelievable. Like, truly, he's recently, especially playing center. Like, I think he's doing that better than anyone would have guessed. He's been he's keeping them alive. He's been absolutely amazing.
You're right.
It's been amazing to see.
Next 2 or 3, he's going to be toast. Right. Feels like.
But it's amazing to see because if you remember that championship year, he led the league in assists. Like, that's the crazy part, to go from being their main point guard to now playing center. Like, there's just not going to be another LeBron in the league for a long time.
No, I agree.
We did have a question in regards to tonight's slate. We can try to get back on topic. I kind of started that a little bit. We were kind of trolling Chirag when he was off the internet. But Matt or CJ71 is wondering, do you have a value player that you like tonight that could score 20-ish DK fantasy points?
Okay, so this has changed a little bit. Trey Jones would have been my answer because I think like Damian Jones was probably going to be bad chalk. That's like the same price, 3,800, 4K. We just found out that Metu is going to be out for health protocols. So that's going to make Jones look better. And then I'm really curious. I think it went off the board to, like, after we finish this, to go back to betting. Marvin Bagley props, Damian Jones props. Like, I think the Kings props came down, but just like what the expectation for those guys is. But yeah, those are probably my two answers right now: Trey Jones and Damian Jones, and avoiding the Pacers chalk guys like Kiefer Sykes and Dwayne Washington. Although, like, at this point, I think Damian Jones has to get more popular because part of what I was thinking here is that LeBron plays center for the Lakers and the Kings don't need a center. because why do you have to play a slow-footed big man against LeBron? Like, you're just going to play Metu at center or Bagley at center or even Harrison Barnes at center. They still may do that, but with Metu not playing, it's a little more likely they actually stick with the traditional center for more of the game.
Is Damian Jones in line to still get the minutes? Is he going to get 20-ish minutes here?
He's been averaging that for like the last 5 games, so I don't
Right.
see why not. And he got to
Yeah.
start in the previous game. Like, it makes sense.
No, that's the key point. You have to make sure he starts. If he doesn't start, you don't play him, because then you get
the upside is limited at 4K.
There's also a chance he doesn't play if he doesn't start. Like, they may just not play. The 2 worst players on the Kings that are in their rotation are Damian Jones and Alex Len. If they can avoid playing them and just play small lineups because LeBron is the center on the other side, I think they'll do that. It just, if Jones starts, he's fine. Or if Len starts, you're fine to play Len. But I'm really interested in Bagley now. Like, I'm not sure if that gets reacted to enough, because I think there is a chance he winds up playing center for like a decent chunk of the game. And I may be remembering this wrong, but when the Kings beat the Lakers in that insane triple overtime game, Bagley was the one guarding LeBron. Chirag, do you remember that being the case? Bagley,
because
LeBron?
I remember because LeBron posted him up on the elbow, and then he was doing he's too small gesture, and then they lost. And I'm like, bro, yes, he's too small. It says a guy that's 7 foot and actually towering over you. But I remember that because he made that exact motion.
Yeah, so if props come back and Bagley's got some lines that are like semi-reasonable, I think we could see him play well over 30 minutes in this game.
Okay.
They're thin in the front court, excluding the 2 guys that you don't want to play Alex Len. Who does he guard if LeBron's the center? Like, I don't think he can step on the floor. I don't even think he can guard Melo. Like, the only way that Alex Len can play is if Dwight Howard or DeAndre Jordan's in the game.
Bagley is at 12.5 for points.
That feels like it's moved a bit. Do we have points, rebounds, assists?
Sure.
I know the line was right around 20. Maybe it's like 22 now, which still probably would be a little low.
21.5.
Yeah, that minus 125 on the over. Like, it's not super exciting, but I would lean towards the over here pretty strongly. Just a lean, but a strong lean, whatever that means. Interpret that how you want.
So with all this being said, are the Lakers going to cover tonight? Or are we at a point now where they're happy to hold on and win these games? 6.5 is the number.
That feels pretty close to the fair line to me. Like this line was 7.5, and it might have even been as high as 8. I'm not sure, but at least 7.5. And like, I think it's right that it moved a bit. It is still a big deal. You don't have Rashawn Holmes. Like, that may change what the Kings do, where they can't play their other big men. And the Lakers have had this massive problem rebounding, but against this team, if Marvin Bagley's the center, maybe that's not true. So I don't know. If you ask me, like, what should the line be? 6 or so? Like, it's about right. I think that, it's pretty close to a coin flip who covers this one.
What just happened?
What did we lose? Yeah, we lost a game here, right?
Yep. Breaking news. Do we have some breaking news?
This is a mistake, actually. I think whoever just made that call is overreacting. DeJounte Murray is on track to play tomorrow. They're playing tonight.
Yes.
So that
Spurs
doesn't matter.
Raptors came off. Okay.
Yeah, Spurs. Murray's back tomorrow in Boston, but not.
The reaction was like, oh, wait.
Murray hit the news. Let's get it down. Or maybe it's just, there was a chance Murray was going to play tonight, and maybe that is relevant that he's not playing tonight.
So is he playing or is he not playing?
He's playing against the Celtics tomorrow in Boston.
Okay. It's where the Celtics turn it around against your Western Conference playoff hopeful Spurs.
That's a tough game for me. I love those teams. There's like 2.
They're a good team. Like, you can't discredit the Spurs. They're well coached.
I
they
agree,
don't have elite superstars, but DeJounte Murray has carved a name out for himself. I've been a fan since the beginning of his career, and when he hurt his knee, I think, and he went and he missed the whole season, and Derek White took over. I've always been a fan of DeJounte Murray and even Derek White. I think that's a really, really good team. They just need one more piece that can put them over the top in terms of like quality depth. They're used to having either Kawhi or I mean, when they brought in LaMarcus, the reason was that so that they could have that guy. That's why they brought in DeMar DeRozan. That's why they did all those things, is because they always have that other guy too. And now that not having them, the guard play has gotten better. But I still think San Antonio is a really super solid team.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if they buy at the deadline, because like they're starting Doug McDermott half the time. I don't think they need a star to contend for a playoff spot. I think they just need, I mean, if you're talking about contending for a championship, that's different. They definitely are a superstar away from that. But just to like get in the playoffs, if that's their, if they're comfortable with that as a goal, like they just need one more solid rotation guy, and they're probably like the 7 or 8 seed.
Yep.
General
and
question.
That Paul George injury is going to loom large.
Yeah, maybe one of those Clippers guys winds up there.
Possibly.
Maybe they tank it. But either way, yeah, they're a team that could be leapfrogged by the Spurs if they stop playing well. Although maybe Kawhi comes back. I have no idea. I'm still just totally speculating when it comes to Kawhi Leonard.
I don't think so. I think he's out for the year.
I don't know if this matters for anything we care about, but Taylor Jenkins is not going to be with the Grizzlies tonight. They're going with an assistant coach. I don't know why. I'm trying to personal reasons, whatever. So,
okay.
Do you guys care generally, like when a coach isn't there for a game? Like I tend to not think about it, but I don't know. Maybe it changes the rotation
in the NBA.
That's actually really, really funny that you mentioned that, because when we did the bet stream on Friday with the Celtics and Suns, Monty Williams was not coaching.
Yes.
And we were wondering in that moment, because Jalen Smith had gotten into foul trouble in the second half, and he got pulled, and they were already down by, I don't know, like 15 or whatever. And it's like, wait, why are you pulling this guy? He's literally your best player right now. And we don't know if Monty would have done that. But like, I do believe there's a little bit of like, I don't know, different changes and affects the rotation a little bit more. Maybe a guy plays a minute or two extra here or there, or less here or there. And I do think it has a little bit of an impact, but how can we quantify that for betting?
Yeah, I don't know. But it is true, like the Suns' replacement for Jalen Smith at that point in the game was Emmanuel Terry, who has since been waived. Like that was I don't think Jalen Smith is that good.
No,
right now.
they didn't even play Emmanuel Terry, I think, at that point.
Maybe it was Ish Wainwright, but they fell apart after Smith left with the 4th foul. That was like when Robert Williams just went like total beast mode and ended up with the triple-double. But like a lot of that production was right after that. Yep. So maybe it matters for Memphis. I'm not going to personally suggest anything based on it, but something to watch.
We have
and
a
that
question
line moved again. The line moved twice. Like it was 3.5. It came back up as 3.5, and now it's back to 3.
Interesting.
I don't know what to make of that, but it did. When it came back up, I saw that it was a half point came back up.
We talk about bounce back spots a lot. This is a classic letdown, right, for Memphis? Like, doesn't that make you feel like you got to take Cleveland?
That's not really the reason. I think it's more the opposite, where the betting line is set as a result of them playing so well last night. Like, I think it's not that I expect them to play worse because they played well last night. It's just that the betting line is a little misjudged because they played so well last night. So it's more that, like, where you're still trying to play, like, what should it be and what is it, compared to like I don't think that they're going to regress because they won last night's game. I don't think that they're coming in thinking like, we got our big win, this one doesn't matter as much. It's not that, although that is possible. Like that certainly does happen. It's just, I don't think you can predict that beforehand. I think you could argue it the other way too, where like this team's on fire now and they're just going to keep it up. So I have no idea which one it is, but I do think like the line is a little bit off because of how well they played, and Cleveland struggled a little bit without Garland, but he's back. Maybe that's not accounted for enough. So like all of that adds up to this being like slight value. Like I really think that this fair line is 3.5 or 4, and -2.5, what it was when we started the show. Like that would have been an okay bet, but nothing special.
Have we noticed, and I'm asking, I don't know, but have we noticed a trend of a player like Garland, who means a lot to what Cleveland has done this year? When a player comes back and you see the conditioning thing, like we just found out Mitchell Robinson's back, conditioning. How is that fared in the first game back, right? Like that's something else too to think about here. Like, does it take a game to get their legs back under them so that maybe read into it like stay away. Maybe
Chirag knows of some other players that have had this come up recently. The ones that come to mind, like John Morant, first game back, they lost to the Thunder at home. And there's been a couple notable examples of a player struggling in their first game back. I think Trae Young had a pretty bad game in his first game back. But also, like Bradley Beal, I think, had one of his 2 or 3 best games of the season in his first game back. It probably has an impact. You just don't know which guys. I mean, if you catch something where a guy's saying like, yeah, I'm really winded, and like the Clint Capella situation where he was vocally saying, I'm not ready to do what I normally do yet. I'm just going out there to help the team, but like I don't have it. Like that was basically the case with him. Unless you get something like that, you're kind of just guessing. So yes, it's definitely possible, and maybe Chirag knows of like other examples besides those. It's definitely possible it has an impact. I just don't know which way. And some guys are totally fine.
I honestly, it's really been difficult to quantify that because it's a challenge because keeping up with all the news of guys that have been in and out has been a challenge in its own. You don't know, like you're like, well, this guy, well, who caught it and then who has it worse, and you don't know because there's been asymptomatic cases. Like Trae Young, when he came back, he said he was asymptomatic. So how much of the COVID situation was it, and how much of it was sitting there doing nothing for 10 days?
Yeah, I think it's more to that. It's so weird that NBA players, when they don't have games, they're just like, I'm just going to play Xbox the whole day. Like, why is that a thing? Like, why are they not? I know they can't use the team facilities to work out, so that's a big deal. But you have to imagine they could like get on a treadmill or something. Like it's weird to see that happen for guys specifically who don't have symptoms.
Yeah. But maybe they're trying to take it easy because there has been, I'm not going to go down this whole entire debate situation, but people have reported that they have had, adverse reactions to exercising while having COVID or after getting their shot, So it's like, it's kind of like, take it easy. Don't risk it. Don't press it. You're a superstar athlete worth tens of millions of dollars. Just chill for 10 days.
Yeah, right. I guess it's different if you were in close contact and had to miss games where you don't have COVID, then there's no reason not to exercise. But if it's someone who had it but doesn't have symptoms, but they don't want to trigger the symptoms, I think is what you're saying. Like Yusuf Nurkic came back. He's like, I sat on the couch for 8 days. Yeah. But like maybe that's what they told him to do. It's like don't push yourself because you might actually get sick if you do.
Yeah.
One last question before we go. Brandon on YouTube is wondering, with the 5-game slate tonight, do you prefer a bigger field or a smaller field tourney? When you consider it's a smaller slate, would you go to a bigger tournament or a smaller tournament? That's a very big picture question.
Yeah, it depends what kind of lineup you're going to make. I think that's the most accurate answer. Personally, I like medium-sized fields, so that doesn't really help too much.
Yeah, same.
So that's like it's hard to pin down. And I think in general, like the idea that the number of games dictates the contest you want to be in, I'm not sure that's the best thing to look at because it's number of games and then also the prevalence of value plays. I think for the most part, when there's not many value plays, the ownership on them, the ones that do exist, gets super concentrated in the smaller fields. So a slate like this, let's say it's only 5 games and there's not that much value. You're going to see in smaller field contests way more attention on LeBron and all these like cheap Pacers and Spurs and potentially Kings guys. So if you want to play contrarian, it's actually easier to do it in a smaller field contest. Obviously, there's less upside in terms of money when there's less people in the tournament, but that's kind of how I look at it, where you are trying to figure out like what is the actual difference in what people are doing between those two contest sizes. And in the smaller one, like I think in the biggest tournaments, LeBron's going to be 45 or 50%, and in the small ones, he could be like 75. So if you're playing LeBron, you probably want to be in the big one. But if you're not playing him, you probably are better off in the small one.
Okay. Very good. You guys have any final thoughts? I think this Memphis-Cleveland game to me is fascinating, just to see how it plays out. Like I think that's probably the best game on here. And then we got to find out, back to the conditioning point, about what it looks like for Julius Randle and the Knicks.
Well, he came in as technically a game time decision now. So
yeah, the Knicks gave us an update. Noel's out, Robinson's in, and Randle game time decision. So we'll see. gut feeling he plays, but I think that could go either way. If that goes down to the wire, just like a quick DFS note to end on, like the Knicks are going to look much more appealing if Randall's out, because no one's planning for that yet. Like he's in projections across the industry. I think like generally when someone's questionable and trending towards playing, you'll just like see websites that do fantasy projections have the assumption that the guy's in. Obi Toppin's 5,200. Like that's not playable if Randall's in there. He's going to be off the bench and play like 20 minutes probably. But if Randall's out, Toppin's probably the starting power forward, and like he's good enough to produce in that, like in substantial playing time. I mean, you have it there. He had 41 fantasy points last game. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
He's like well underpriced if the situation is that Randall doesn't play. And that game is 30 minutes after lock on a slate where, I mean, I think a lot of the chalk forwards, well, it's LeBron late, but like there aren't guys in this price range, I think, that people are playing. Like, I don't think it's going to be that easy to swap to him if, let's say, Randall's ruled out at 7:05, after the first two games have locked. So like Toppin's probably, I mean, this might be a little bit of a stretch. If we get Randall ruled out at 7:05, Toppin's my favorite player on the slate. But that's a pretty narrow, like it has to be Randall doesn't play, and it also has to be, it comes after lock, or at least like a round lock where people don't have time to react to it.
This is back to the discussion of daily fantasy in the NBA being a job.
Yep.
That what you just explained is the navigating you must do.
Yeah, I would say this is a much easier slate than what we've had recently.
That's
because
fair.
There's only a couple of these, like it's still hard. Don't get me wrong. I agree with you. It's still hard, but there's only like 3 of these things tonight. Over the past several weeks, there's been like this decision, but 17 of them every night. So
right.
Yeah, like how do you, it's too many. But if there's just a few of them, I think even like a casual player can, I have 2 or 3 things to look out for, and that's it. That's probably okay for most people. It's just, you get these slates where like everyone has COVID, and then it's too much.
Yeah.
Jerry has a quick question, then we got to go. Quick question. Is it a good idea to maybe pair LeBron with Devin Booker?
I don't see anything wrong with that. Chirag, what about you?
I just don't see the upside at 8,800. Yeah, we can have a track meet matchup, but you're better off stacking either Sacramento or looking at Cameron Payne, who's been playing better, and with what's his name, Landry Shamet out, I expect Cameron Payne to pick up more minutes. So I think that's actually the best move there.
Yeah, I think I'd actually rather than play LeBron. I mean, whatever, LeBron projects to be the best player on the slate, and it's really just a matter of like how many people have him, why you wouldn't want him. But I think playing Westbrook with some Kings guys that may be under the radar, like not Damian Jones, because everyone's going to play Damian Jones, but like Westbrook and Bagley, like that is a stack. I think that's the most appealing spot for me. And Westbrook is like pretty direct leverage off LeBron. Like anytime Westbrook is doing anything, LeBron doesn't really have the ball, which say what you want about that in terms of the Lakers winning, but they're pretty clearly negatively correlated in terms of their fantasy points.
Yep. Okay, we need to go. Best of luck, everybody, with your contests as well as your bets. A 5-game slate in the NBA for Chirag, Hira, Matt Meiselman, our crew behind the scenes, Eamon and Tom. Brendan Glasheen saying so long. The sweat is back on these platforms, Twitch, YouTube, also on the DK Nation Twitter at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Good luck and have a great night. We'll see you.